Hey guys, I'm Jackson Cobalt, and I'm testing out a new video format, so let me know in the comments if you like it or not. Leave a like, subscribe. But yes, as the title says, I might be the only person who prefers Legend of Korra to Avatar The Last Airbender. Now, a couple of disclaimers. This is personal preference, this is personal opinion. I'm not saying that Legend of Korra is better. I'm just saying that what it does better, I personally enjoy more. Um, and also, I will be providing a lot of evidence. And it's not saying that Last Airbender sucks, because it doesn't. It's like, honestly, in my head, I always think of them as two shows that are like sequel shows. Like they are the same show. When I'm ranking TV shows, I always rank them together with a slash. If I had to rank them separate, I would put Korra a slot above and Last Airbender a slot below. But yes, and this is just me explaining that. Um, Another disclaimer: uh, if you don't agree with me, just listen to my points. I mean, a lot of people say that Korra sucks, but a lot of the people who say that The Legend of Korra sucks, especially the ones making videos on it, actually really enjoy the show and want it to be better than it is. Um, so, yes. Let's continue on. So, reasons why I prefer Korra to Airbender. I'm going to list the reasons here, and then I'm going to go through each one individually. And I'm going to go starting with the most objective to the most subjective. And I've talked this about a lot of my friends, a lot of people, and yes, it is, and some of them even agree with all of my points, but they still prefer Airbender better. And you know what? Maybe you do too, but I personally prefer Korra better. Number one, the most objective is the art style and the animation. The fight scenes are beautiful. The art, and yeah, I'll get into it later. Two, the villains. Three, character identification. And four, feeling and flow. I will leave a list of timestamps in the description for when each of these start, so you can skip around to like the summary of my points. Okay. The fight scenes in this show are phenomenal. The lighting, the flow of the fight, the animation itself, it's all very, very beautiful. And that is something that I just really love. It's more energetic, it's more dynamic in my opinion. And it is more flashy, and I honestly like that. I love how the evolution of bending happens. I just love all the fight scenes in this show. And this is something that a lot of people say. The animation is better. The animation from the first book of Airbender to the last book of Korra is one linear path upwards. Each book is better than the previous one. And book one of Korra is actually, in my opinion, quite a huge step up from book 3 of Airbender. So yeah, talking about the fight scenes, the fight choreography, just as good. Sure, it might not have the same martial art inspirations, but that is because a lot of the characters are using sort of an MMA style because they've mixed the cultures of different bending styles, and that leads to a lot of stuff. More traditional, like this has been pointed out before, but more traditional characters like Tenzin still fight using that same style. Toph still fights with her own unique style. In fact, like Toph's daughters sometimes use some of Toph's fighting styles, and that still makes the fights feel unique and driven. There is one fight in Book 1 of Korra where it is a pitch black room and the only light is coming from Korra's firebending, and that scene alone stands out as how good the lighting is in this show. And I took screenshots that really show how the lighting impacts the environment. Not a whole lot of shows do this, and it is such a great attention to detail. I'm sure the original Avatar did it, but it's far less noticeable in my mind. When I think about firebending in Korra, I think about the light, and I think about the lighting, and I think about how cool it looks. In Avatar, I just think about fire. I think it feels more generic. I might be wrong. It's just less pronounced. But yes. So, step 2, the villains. Everybody loves the villains. Okay, maybe not Untitled, but I still love Untitled. So the villains are terrifying, but they're also nuanced. You have a great selection of villains here. And you have Amon. Amon is such a great anti-villain, and he is really, really terrifying. The fact that he's able to effortlessly beat benders without bending at all. The fact that he resists bloodbending. Like, he's not completely immune to it. You see when TLoK tries to bloodbend Amon, that he stutters, but he pushes through it. And that is terrifying. Because if there's one thing that this show does really well, it makes the villains terrifying. Untitled, he is terrifying. He's a false ally. He's someone who is in a position of power, who is family to Korra. And he uses this to puppet master the game. And he is often compared to be the one with the least amount of, like, justifications and whatever, but what he wants to do is he wants to bring balance to the world. He is very obsessed with balanced and neutrality, and that's why Vaatu is able to persuade him, and that's because Untitled wants balance, and darkness needs its time to be, because light has been so powerful, darkness needs to be in balance with it. And that is a proper motivation. It's something that other stories deal with too. The fact that light and darkness have to be in balance with each other, or else the world can swing too far one way over another. And I really like how Untitled was right about letting the spirit world and the human world one, because that's interesting, and Korra lets that happen, and Korra keeps it that way. Zahir. Oh, Zahir is like everybody's favorite villain. He's not my favorite. He's actually my second least favorite of these 4 villains. Because maybe he is my least favorite. Zahir is cool. He's menacing. He's threatening. He actively is there with Korra, and like threatens her directly. He does. There's brutal things. But my favorite villain is Kuvira, because it takes everything from the previous things: the false allyship, the anti-villainness, the just sheer force of nature power, the conniving. She is the ultimate villain that this show has ever seen, in my opinion. The screenshot I have here of that mind, like that image, lives in my mind. When someone mentions villains in Korra, that thing, because that was terrifying. This scene where she's metal bending everyone's hands down to the train tracks with the oncoming train, that is terrifying. It's so good, and it shows the rise of dictatorship. It shows so much in how someone can appear good and have good intentions, but take things just way too far. And that's honestly the thing with all 4 villains. They are well-intentioned extremists. But there's another reason why I like them so much. And this slide is going to tell it. So, comparing it to Airbender, Ozai is barely an antagonist to Aang. Let me explain. See, Aang's antagonist is the Fire Nation. The Fire Nation threatens him. The Fire Nation wants him. Ozai wants him, but Ozai's just the armchair villain. He's not actively pursuing Aang. In fact, he barely gives any orders to people to chase Aang. People who actually are antagonists to Aang are Zuko, Zhao, and Azula. And even then, Zhao is set up as an antagonist to Zuko. Azula, honestly, is far more antagonistic to Zuko. And also, Ozai is also more of an antagonist to Zuko than Aang. And this actually makes me feel like Zuko is the one who has the antagonist, and he's the main character. Which is why I've never really felt super intimidated by any of these three, because they don't really have that drive to Aang. And the show doesn't make them do anything super devastating. Whereas all four villains are, in fact, antagonists to Korra. Amon is threatening bending, and to bending Korra to Korra, bending is everything. It's a very personal level. It has that very personal level, but also the grand scale of it. TLoK is specifically targeting Korra. It's family. It's another very personal relationship between them. It's a very personal threatening, and that personal on that personal level is far more compelling to me. Kuvira wants to take over Republic City for the Earth Kingdom, but Korra wants to protect Republic City. This is, again, very personal. Zahir wants to kill the Avatar. Just straight up, he wants to kill the Avatar. So, of course, that's an antagonistic force to Korra. And he actually is there fighting Korra. And he actually has, like, ideologies and thoughts to it. And that's not something that Ozai or even Azula, and definitely not Zhao, have. These four villains are better villains. And basically everyone I've ever spoken to, agrees on this point. All four of these, people have argued with me on TLoK, but at least Amon, Kuvira, and Zahir are far more threatening. They're far more nuanced. They're far more interesting. And they're just, honestly, feel far more villainous and antagonistic than any of Aang's gang of villains. So, yeah. Alright. Next up. I'm going to ask you a question. Which character do you identify the most in normal Team Avatar? Second, which character do you identify most in Korra's Team Avatar? Now, I've asked this question to a lot of people, and I always give an answer back. I say that in the original Team Avatar with Aang, I don't identify with any of them. Not very much. Like I don't feel, I'm not attached to Aang. I'm attached to Zuko, but I'm not really a Zuko. I love Toph as a character, but again, I don't identify with that. Katara, I've never been a fan of Katara, but I also don't hate Katara. And Sokka, the same boat as Katara, but honestly, I identify the most with Sokka, but it's like just like a smidge more, but I don't identify with any of them. Whereas, I still have a hard time answering this question with Team Korra, but that's because I love them all. I identify with them all, except maybe Tenzin, but Tenzin's barely a member of Team Korra. And maybe the reason why I identify a lot more with Team Korra is because they have less of a character. They're less characterized, less nuanced. I mean, maybe that's it. But honestly, I love identifying with characters, and if a character being too nuanced and specialized makes it harder for them to be identified, I guess that's just the thing with me. It's a me problem. It's a skill issue. The main members of Team Korra, in my eyes, are the 6 here. So, Mako. I identify with Mako, like, 100%. Like, he is very much me. Not entirely, but I'm also identify a lot with Bolin. And actually, people generally don't like Mako, but I love Mako. He might be my favorite character. It's very close between him and Jinora, which one's my favorite character. I identify more with Mako than Zuko. I identify more with Korra than Aang. I'm a boy. I mean, yeah, I'm male, but I've always identified more with Korra. And I did watch the show when I was a teenager at first. So, uh, with Korra, yeah, I still identified more with Korra than with Aang. Aang just kind of feels weird. I don't like. I like his character, but he's never been on a list of favorite characters. Like not even in his show. Like honestly, the character I identify the most with in Airbender is probably May. Anyway, going over here back to Korra. Bolin, I identify a lot with Bolin. I like Bolin. Bolin's more extroverted. Extroverted. I'm more extroverted. Um, and I love his dynamic with Mako. They're brothers, and I love all of Bolin's dynamics. Honestly, I love his romance partners. I love him and Opal as a couple. They're like the cutest thing ever. I identify a lot with Asami. A little less, probably the least out of all the characters. But I still identify with Asami more than Sokka. That's the difference. I identify a lot with Kai. When Kai was introduced to the show, I instantly fell in love with his character because he is the character that I want to be. One of my first D&D characters that I got to make was based on Kai. That is how much it is. And Jinora is awesome. Jinora is one of my favorite characters. I identify with her just a ton. Not entirely, but still, her story is so good. I love book 2 because putting her in the spotlight, and so much. That was a point I forgot to mention before. I actually freaking love book 2. Book 2 has its faults, but I still think it's better than book 1. I think each book is better than the last one. And sure, book 2's finale, it's not really rooted in bending. That's my only issue with it. Sure, it's like a flashy laser light show, but Aang got to have a flashy laser light show with Ozai, so I don't really see the double standard. The spirit world, I loved exploring the spirit world with Korra and Jinora. I loved a lot. I like the Tenzin and his brothers thing. I loved Bolin with Nuktuk and Varric and Asami, and I loved Bolin and Eska. I think it's Eska. I always get their names mixed up. I think that was like intentional. I love book 2 was just so good. I wish book 2 was handled a bit better because a lot of it was really good, but just lacked a bit on the execution. And I agree that the ending kind of sucks, but yes. Book 4 is my favorite book just because book 4 is so good. Book 4 of Legend of Korra. Okay, I'm gonna skip to the next one. Okay. Feeling and flow. I have a lot of the things, okay? This doesn't really make much sense. Okay. So, the feeling and flow is why I love Korra. There's something. So, in Airbender, you have all these episodes, but except for a few select ones, sure, book 3 is a bad example of this, but in Avatar, every episode is fairly disconnected from the other episodes. Even here, the Avatar and the Fire Lord is fairly disconnected from The Runaway, which is fairly disconnected from Puppet Master, which is fairly disconnected from Nightmares and Daydreams. They don't really have much to do with each other, which has its benefits. It's more episodic. It's easier to just watch one episode at a time. But that's not what I really like. I really like Korra's style, where each episode starts at the beginning. Each episode starts at the end of the last episode with very minimal time cuts between episodes, and then a longer gap between seasons. Whereas in Avatar, it's actually the other way around, where the gap between seasons is basically 0. In fact, it's generally smaller than the gap between episodes. or at least it feels smaller than the gap between episodes. And yes, book 4 is the culmination of this. Book 4 has some of the best pacing I've ever seen, just like in general. It is 13 episodes, but it is paced like, honestly, if someone had put like, it is the one mega video, I didn't look at the time, there wasn't the beginning and ending cards, and they asked me how much time was in there, and after I watched it, I could like say that like it is a full 20, 21, 24 episode season. That is how good it is. It is so incredibly paced. It it has everything I would ever want. It deals with a lot of interesting things. Like Korra alone is just a really great episode. I love Mako and Wu. Like, that dynamic is fantastic. I love it so much. And like, I love the Battle of Zaofu. And like the ending here, Operation Beifong, is one of the most epic episodes ever. Kuvira's Gambit, Day of the Colossus, man, the reveal. I was watching this each week as they came out. I remember specifically, and I got so hyped for the finale because, oh my god, and it did not disappoint. The finale of Legend of Korra is like so good. One of the best finales I've ever seen, especially the last 5 minutes with Varric and with Varric's wedding, and Korra and Asami getting to go to the spirit realm, and the happy endings all around. It is so beautiful. It is a work of art. I don't really feel the same way towards Sozin's Comet. Yeah, I don't. I mean, Sozin's Comet has good moments in it. It's just slow. The Aang and Ozai fight, and I find the Zuko and Azula fight, the last Agni Kai, is just kind of lacking. Maybe it's like slow paced. It has the emotion, but it lacks the fast paced action. Whereas Aang versus Ozai lacks the emotion, but has the fast paced action. They sort of balance each other out, but I wish it was more. They each had more time, and they got to have more differences. Book 4 of Legend of Korra is one of my favorite overall seasons of any TV show I've ever watched. If someone had to list what is your favorite season of TV show, Legend of Korra Book 4 is up there. And Book 3 of Airbender just kinda isn't. At least for me. A couple notes I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video. I have seen Airbender like 20... my estimate's like 24 times. I've seen it a lot. And Legend of Korra, I know exactly how many times I've seen it. I've seen it 12 times. And honestly, I could watch Legend of Korra again and again. Like, I'm not bored of it by any means. However, I'm kind of bored of Avatar. The only reason I would watch Avatar The Last Airbender, the animated show at least, again, is to show it to someone else. Like, it's not something I would just watch again just for no reason. However, Korra, I would watch it again for no reason. I love the show that much. My feelings on the show are just really good. I love season 1 of Korra. It's my least favorite season, but and I wish there was better things there. But I love pro bending. I love the romance subplot. Honestly, if I could get just a TV show, a sports anime of pro bending, Oh, I would watch that. I would pay to watch that. I would pay for people to create it. Like, I mean, according if I had the money, if I had $1 million, I would spend money so that people would make me a sports anime for pro bending. I love it that much. And I don't really find an issue to the romance subplot. I love love triangles. It was fumbled a little bit with a bit more, maybe like a couple more episodes. I feel like they could have really done something good with it in my eyes. But I do love how the fallout of it happens and how they sort of still become friends later on. It's really good. And yeah, the just general feelings on the shows. Yeah, I guess that's about it. But there's like, whereas I can't think of an episode in Korra that I would want to skip. I could think of like 10 episodes of Airbender I would want to skip. Honestly, that is the difference of these two shows. And that's probably just because I'm bored of Airbender and I'm not bored of Korra. Yeah, so last final words. I know that Korra isn't the greatest, but it's one of my favorite shows. And I think that Korra finds a special place in my heart over Airbender. Okay, now I'm going to talk about, just briefly, I'm going to mention live action Avatar: The Last Airbender on Netflix is freaking amazing, dude. Whew. Like, it renewed my love for Airbender in a time when I still talked about it with like my friends and family. Occasionally we'd bring it up, but I would always have this kind of like disdain, hesitation about it. Because I just felt like a bit not as connected with it. But like, it used to be my favorite show when I was like that's why I watched it so many times. Me and my brother, there would be days where we would just rewatch Avatar: The Last Airbender. Summer break from school, we'd be watching Avatar: The Last Airbender over and over and over and over and over again. Legend of Korra, when Legend of Korra finished airing, we did the same thing with Legend of Korra. Less times though, because we were older and we had more things to do. But yeah. Um but yes. Netflix's Avatar: The Last Airbender is really, really good. I love it. I love what they did just across the board. It's a different show, but it's so much fun, and I love it. So yeah, just yell and scream at me in the comments about how my opinion sucks because whatever reason. Last word. I think it's Remembrances. Remembrances is the clip show. It's the best recap episode, but also Ember Island Players is also at the same time the best recap episode. They are equally just as good as a recap. They are both top tier in my eyes, some of the best single episodes in the entirety of like media, at least in the comedic sense. So yeah, this has been Jackson Cobalt. Everyone have a fantastic rest of your day, and as always, stay awesome. Goodbye, guys.